My children promised me a celebration, but the balloons they brought me burst into bars. Hey there, my darlings. Margaret Wilkinson speaking, straight from a heart that's taken more bruises than a thrift store sofa. Where are y'all tuning in from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I love picturing this little porch swing community scattered across the map, rocking in unison. I was 68 years old, 3 years a widow, 10 years a grandmother, and exactly one day away from what I thought would be the sweetest family reunion since my Charles slipped into glory. Quincy, my oldest, had called in that charming bass of his, "Mama, clear your Saturday. We've arranged a surprise ici." Now surprises never sat easy on my tongue. They fizz like Alka-Seltzer, promise of relief with a bitter aftertaste. But a mother's optimism is a quilt stitched from old habits. You keep pulling it up even when threads fray. I baked lemon chess pies, pressed my one good church dress, and braided my silvering curls so they'd lie neat beneath my Sunday hat. When the morning came, the sky over Savannah was drenched in honeyed light, yet my bones pricked with cold. Nerves, I told myself, folding the RSVP card Quincy's wife had mailed. A special journey for Mom. They'd spelled Mom instead of Mama, but I swallowed the typo like another pill in my breakfast saucer. If only I'd read the fine print of a child's smile. A black Mercedes van rolled up at 9 on the dot. It was slicker than frog spit. Windows tinted so dark they swallowed the neighborhood's gossip. Quincy stepped out first, polished as a deacon, flashing that salesman grin he honed selling waterfront condos to Yankee retirees. Behind him, my daughter Lorraine teetered in stilettos sharp enough to carve a wishbone. "Don't fuss with bags, Mama," Quincy purred, lifting my suitcase. "This is a turnkey getaway." His cologne, fresh-cut dollar bills, and distant gilt curled in the humid air. I tried to hush the shiver scuttling up my spine. A mother must trust her own, I reminded myself, slipping into the leather-scented belly of that van. The door shut with a muffled thud, like pew cushions accepting a final amen. We drove south over the marshlands, Spanish moss dangling like repentant sinners. Lorraine chattered about wellness amenities, how seasoned citizens deserved premium care. The words slid past me, slick with euphemisms. I heard citizens, I heard care, but my mind snagged on seasoned, as if life had pre-salted me for someone else's table. 30 minutes in, Quincy started a slideshow on the seatback screen. Sunlit lobbies, therapy pools, chefs and toques flipping herb-roasted salmon. "Creekside Haven," the banner read. My throat cinched tighter than church girdles. "Mama, imagine Pilates at dawn, art therapy at noon," Lorraine cooed, tapping manicured nails against the glass. She'd always envied my sketchbooks, said I drew feelings she couldn't pronounce. Now she packaged those same feelings into programming. I turned to the window, watching cattails whip past like exclamation points. A nursing home and a PowerPoint presentation. That was their party. My heart stampeded through memories. Quincy at 7, sobbing after a scraped knee. Lorraine at 10, baking rock-hard cookies while I clapped like they were blue ribbon pies. I'd nursed their fevers with chilled washcloths, shielded their pride before teachers, shelled out college tuition with retail wages and second-shift cleaning gigs. Was motherhood some subscription they could cancel once the trial turned costly? The van slowed before iron gates curled into elegant filigree. Beyond them, manicured lawns, a man-made pond pretending to be a lake, brick buildings whose windows glittered like watchful eyes. A sign announced, "Welcome home, residents." The exclamation point felt like a slap. My chest constricted, each breath a broken seashell. Quincy reached for my hand. "Mama, you'll love it here." Love? Love is a verb, child, and verbs require work. You can't outsource a verb to medical staff in pastel scrubs. We entered the lobby. Chandeliers glittering like fallen halos, the air perfumed with lavender and Lysol. A receptionist smiled too wide, slid release forms across polished marble. "With your signature, Ms. Wilkinson, we can finalize a 6-month trial residency." 6 months trial residency. The words clanged against my ribs. Quincy pointed where to sign, his finger trembling just enough to betray conscience. Lorraine dabbed invisible sweat from her temple. I lifted the pen, but my sight blurred. "Hold steady, Margaret." My late Charles's wedding band pressed cool against my palm, a silent metronome of vows once made. I realized no one had asked what I wanted. They'd planned, they'd paid, they'd decided. My consent was item number 42 on their to-do list. I set the pen down. The room seemed to inhale. Somewhere down the corridor, a TV spilled daytime talk show chatter. A resident in a bathrobe shuffled by, eyes vacant as an abandoned house. Quincy's voice softened. Salesman turned son again. Mama, we can't keep running over every weekend. We've got the kids' soccer, Lorraine's conferences. There it was. The ledger of inconveniences, each minute they'd ever spent on me, tallied like overdraft fees. Children forget diapers cost nights of sleep. Adults remember parent care costs weekends at Disney. I thought of my small bungalow, the lemon trees Charles planted, my church choir Wednesday nights, Miss Reba next door bringing okra casserole. They were stripping me of place, purpose, community, folding my life into an address change. A tear scorched its way down, but I kept my chin like granite. Is this where you put things you don't have time to polish anymore? I asked, voice steady yet lethal. Lorraine blinked. Quincy swallowed. The receptionist shifted, scenting trouble. Of course not, Lorraine whispered, but her heel clicked once, an anxious telegraph. I slipped the unsigned forms back. Then drive me home. Quincy's jaw clenched. Mama, don't be dramatic. We've paid deposits. Deposits. They'd invested in my confinement the way folks invest in cruise packages. I inhaled slow, let the taste of betrayal settle on my tongue, metallic like a bitten dream. Refund them, I said, each syllable dipped in ice. Because this daughter of God ain't for sale nor storage. Lorraine's eyes flared, half fury, half shame. Quincy rubbed his brow, calculating losses. In dollars, not dignity. I pushed past them toward the exit, heart pounding a battle drum, but just as the glass doors parted, a nurse stepped into my path, clipboard raised. Ms. Wilkinson, your room is ready. Shall I show you? Behind me, Quincy hissed, Mama, you've got no ride back. You have to stay at least tonight. I turned, meeting his gaze, my baby boy grown into a stranger in cufflinks. I've caught buses in the thunderstorms, son. I can catch one now. Yet even as bravery rang in my ears, a cold fist squeezed. What if the world outside had moved on without me? What if pride walked me into darker loneliness than any sunlit facility could impose? The nurse's smile faltered. The lobby grew hushed. In that pause, I glimpsed corridors lined with residents whose stories dissolved into silence long before mine reached its bridge. I stood at a crossroads, ink drying on time's contract. One signature could rewrite the rest of my days. One refusal could strand me in a storm of my own making. And then, Quincy played his ace. He lifted a folded paper, power of attorney, already notarized. Mom, we did this for emergencies. Don't make us use it. My breath hitched. The chandelier's crystals fractured the light into stabbing shards. In a single flash, I understood. They could sign for me. The pen I'd rejected moments earlier now hovered like a guillotine above my freedom. If you think a mother's love bends under legal ink, think again. But the way I fought back, oh, my dears, you're not ready for that twist. I will show you the first crack in their perfect plan, and trust me, it splits wider than the Georgia clay in August. The receptionist's pen quivered like a viper ready to strike, hovering above a dotted line that would trap my sunset years inside designer wallpaper and lavender disinfectant. Quincy's notarized paper, power of attorney, glittered in his hand like a polished manacle. I could have wailed. I could have begged. Instead, I straightened my spine the way my late husband used to do before leading Sunday hymns. Son, I said, voice low, a signature without a willing soul behind it is nothing but scribbles. Lorraine opened her crimson lips, but I held up a palm. Y'all may own the ink, but I still own this heartbeat. A security guard, mid-20s, polite smile, muscles poured into a polo, shifted closer. They thought frailty rode on my shoulders. They forgot grit likes to wear grandma's cardigans. Give me 1 hour, I told Quincy. You owe me at least that. He checked his Rolex and nodded, calculation flickering behind his eyes. He believed that 60 minutes and institutional charm would soften me. Bless his heart, he'd never read the fine print of a mother's fury. I needed allies, and allies, like biscuits, must rise fast in hot kitchens. My cell phone lay buried in my handbag, a flip phone relic, but reliable as dawn. I pressed speed dial 3. 3. After 2 rings came a gravel-warm answer. First Baptist Parsonage, Jarvis speaking. Deacon, I whispered. It's Margaret. I'm in trouble that smells like fresh varnish and legal paper. He didn't ask for details. Put me on speaker with their admissions director, he said. 30 seconds later, his voice rolled through the lobby, deep as a Riverbend sermon. This institution is about to hold my congregant against her expressed will. I've already dialed Savannah PD and Channel 7. 30 minutes and a news van will block your porte cochere. Still want that publicity? The admissions director paled. Quincy's confidence cracked like sugar glass. Lorraine's stilettos tapped a frantic tattoo. Legal leverage loves daylight about as much as cockroaches. They conferred in hissed whispers. The guard eased back. At length, Quincy handed me my suitcase, jaw clenched. Fine, but we talk tonight, Mama. Rationally. I've been rational since the day I diapered you, I said, marching toward the sliding doors. Outside, heat slapped me. Savannah in July, thick enough to spoon. I walked to the bus stop, suitcase wheels rattling over concrete seams. Each step felt like I was reclaiming acreage on a map of my own life. Bus number 14 arrived in a wheeze of brakes. I collapsed onto the vinyl seat, heart hammering, wondering how deep my children's scheme ran. A nagging worry nipped. Had they already touched my finances? I dialed Merrill Trust's automated line, punched in the account code my mind kept like scripture. Current balance, $289.17. My stomach pitched. Last week it had been $42,000. Quincy must have transferred the funds under that shiny POA the moment the ink dried. The bus lurched. Sweat crawled down my spine. My house, my account. What else had they pilfered while wrapping it in the ribbon of care? When downtown finally slid past, I hopped off near Lafayette Square and strode into the dusty office of Harold Huck Abernathy, attorney at law and domino partner of my late husband. He looked up, spectacles slipping. Margaret, Lord, you look like the last hen out the barn. I need an emergency revocation of power of attorney, I said, voice steady, and a forensic look at my bank statements. Within 20 minutes, Huck had run the paperwork, witnessed by his wide-eyed secretary. It's signed, sealed, and we'll FedEx copies to every bank by tomorrow, he assured. But Margaret, your kids may contest. You ready for that battle? I thought of Lorraine's lipstick smile, Quincy's Rolex glare, of lemon chess pies cooling on an empty counter. Ready as David with a sling, I said. By late afternoon, I reached my humble bungalow on Magnolia Lane, only to find a crisp white sign staked in the yard. Sold. Closing next week. My knees nearly buckled. Scarlet bougainvillea climbed the porch rail, oblivious to betrayal blooming beneath. I fumbled for the spare key under the geranium pot. Inside, living room walls stood naked. Family portraits gone, nail holes like tiny open mouths. Moving boxes lined the hallway, half filled with the debris of my identity. A yellow legal pad lay on the dining table. Lorraine's handwriting flowed across the top. Estate liquidation, high priority. Underneath, bullet points tallied every antique, quilt, and photograph, each memory assigned a price tag. Tears blurred ink. I pressed a trembling hand to the cedar chest where Charles's war medals rested. The lid gaped. Medals were missing. A lone photo remained. Charles at 22, grinning in uniform. I clutched it, palm sweaty. I failed to guard the living. Damned if I'll fail the dead. Miss Reba burst through the back door, apron flapping. Girl, I saw strangers hauling your furniture. Furniture, I explained in fragments. Creekside Haven, emptied account, forged mercy. Anger flashed in her eyes. We'll stash what's left in my garage tonight, she said. And my nephew's a deputy. He'll escort those movers right off your lawn come sunrise. Strength gathered like a storm tide. Reba brewed chicory coffee while we yanked heirlooms into cardboard boxes, quilts, journals, the silver hairbrush my mother gave me when curls were still chestnut. With each rescued trinket, fury hardened into resolve. Past midnight, we sat on the porch swing, cicadas thrumming. I drafted a list. Contacts, clergy, former colleagues, anyone who'd testify to my competence. They think loneliness will corner me, I said, but a community is just phone calls strung together. Reba patted my hand. Honey, cornered cats show claws nobody expects. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Quincy again. I let it ring, voicemail ballooning with worried-sounding threats. Then Lorraine texted, You're being unreasonable. Without Creekside, you'll be isolated. Think of your health. Health. The irony snapped something inside me. I typed back one line. Isolation is a cage, not a cure. Then I silenced the phone. I wasn't naive. Courts could crawl, accounts might stay frozen for weeks. But somewhere between tea-time lawyers and casserole-bearing neighbors, I'd carve a trench they couldn't cross. Before dawn's first blush, I locked the house, slid Charles's photo into my purse, and pressed Reba's spare truck keys into my palm. Let's pay Creekside a return visit, I whispered. I left without souvenirs. "What on earth you planning?" she asked. I smiled a flint spark grin to remind their glossy brochure that dignity doesn't come pre-packaged and to collect every document those vultures ever made me sign. We backed down Magnolia Lane, taillights slicing the night. In the rearview mirror, my house receded, but something new glowed in its place. Purpose, fierce and unblinking. They thought paperwork was a padlock. They forgot a mother's love keeps bolt cutters in her Bible. I walked back into Creekside's marbled lobby, not as their next resident, but as their reckoning. And, friends, the look on Quincy's face when I reveal what I uncovered in their financial trail? Oh, you'll want front row seats for that reckoning. Reba's pickup eased into Creekside Haven at dawn, dew ghosting the manicured lawns. I wore my Sunday hat like armor. Reba, bless her, carried a thermos and the steely calm of a bailiff. Inside, the lobby lights still burned, but the receptionist from yesterday had vanished. A lone janitor hummed hymns while buffing marble. I strode past him to the records office, heart hammering a Sousa march. The door was locked. Reba coughed, loud enough to rattle hinges, then pointed at an unattended cleaning cart. A spare master key dangled from its bright pink lanyard. Providence. Or maybe just poor housekeeping. The filing room smelled of lemon cleaner and secrets. Cabinets lined the walls, alphabetized lives trapped in folders. I located W for Wilkinson. 2 thin files. Inside the first lay an unsigned residency contract. The second held billing forms dated 2 weeks ago, before Quincy's surprise. My signature was there in shaky imitation, notarized by a name I didn't recognize. Forgery, I whispered. Reba's brows nodded. We snapped photos of every sheet, my flip phone clicking like a typewriter. On the desk, a computer sat unlocked. The screen displayed an email thread. Quincy negotiating family discount rates in exchange for early payment. Beneath that, Lorraine forwarded my medical summaries. Old arthritis reports spun into progressive instability. My knees buckled at their audacity. Footsteps approached. Reba nudged me behind a tall cabinet just as the admissions director entered, yawning. He dropped a box labeled Archives on the desk, then left for coffee. We peeked inside, stacks of registered mail receipts proving deposit transfers from my Merrill Trust account straight to Creekside's escrow. "Gotcha," I murmured. We gathered every incriminating slip into a manila envelope, slid it under my coat, and slipped back to the lobby. The janitor raised an eyebrow. Reba handed him the thermos. "Sweet tea. They're stingy on breaks," she said. He grinned, saluting as we slipped through automatic doors. Allies truly do rise fast. By mid-morning, we sat in Huck Abernathy's office again. He scanned the forged forms, whistled low. "Open and shut elder abuse suit," he said. "We'll freeze the house sale today." Relief warmed my chest, tempered by grief. My own children had weaponized paperwork like switchblades. I called Quincy. He picked up on the second ring, irritable. "Mama, we're drafting a revised care plan." "Draft a lawyer," I cut in. "I've revoked your POA and filed for fraud." Creekside handed me the proof. Silence. A long, hollow silence where his confidence used to be. "You stole from me, son," I said, voice breaking just once. "But worse. You tried to steal my days." "Lorraine pushed this," he muttered. Excuses already blooming. I ended the call before they choked me. That evening, Reba and I boxed the last of my keepsakes. A deputy, her nephew, stood watch. I found Charles's missing medals in Lorraine's picnic basket, tagged for an estate auction. I clasped them to my chest, tears salty on silver. When sunset bled gold through the pecan trees, I wrote 2 letters, one to Quincy, one to Lorraine. Not hate, but boundaries sharp as barbed wire. I told them repentance is possible yet expensive, payable only in time, sweat, and truth. I sealed the envelopes, feeling both lighter and older. Then I faced Reba's porch camera, hit record, and spoke to you, dear listener. They thought my story ended in a nursing home, but Chapter 2 has just begun, and the reckoning, it marches on steel-tipped heels. You'll see how a small-town attorney and a church choir unravel a scheme that reaches far beyond Creekside's gates, and why Lorraine will wish she'd never mailed those forged papers. Don't blink, loves. Justice is tuning up its choir. The morning after I reclaimed Charles's medals, Savannah woke to headlines it hadn't seen since hurricane season. Local grandmother alleges elder fraud. Family responds. Huck's press release worked faster than caffeine. By 8 o'clock, our porch filled with reporters and 2 camera crews. I stood in Reba's borrowed dress, Bible in hand, and told every lens the same truth. My children love convenience more than kin, but I will not be warehoused. Quincy texted frantically, "Mom, stop talking to media. Call me." Lorraine followed with lawyerly ice. "Defamation has consequences." I silenced the phone again. Sometimes a mother's lesson needs echo, not dialogue. Huck filed an injunction to freeze house proceeds 5 minutes before the title company opened. Creekside's attorney tried to argue good faith care, but the judge raised one eyebrow at the forged signature. Court date set for 30 days. I felt time tilt in my favor for the first time since that black Mercedes van. Yet victory tasted flat. Family wounds never pair well with champagne. So I walked to First Baptist Fellowship Hall, where the Tuesday quilting circle met. Those women stitched comfort into cotton the way surgeons stitch flesh. And when I entered, needles paused midair. "Margaret, honey," Sister Louise said, "show us where it hurts." I broke then ugly, shaking sobs that stained my cheeks and her sleeve. They didn't hush me. They just kept quilting, letting grief work itself into the fabric. By the time the coffee pot hissed empty, a choir plan, had taken shape. Sunday arrived. Creekside's chapel usually hosted polite hymn sing-alongs for residents. That morning, 30 members of First Baptist Gospel Voices packed the pews, robes shimmering cobalt. I marched in beside them and took the lectern. Quincy and Lorraine had been summoned by a nervous administrator to clear up misunderstandings. They slipped into the back row, startled to see a full congregation. I met Quincy's eyes, then began, "Children, honor thy father and mother, not with contracts, but with conscience." As the choir swelled behind me, "Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down," I read aloud the forged documents, the escrow receipts, the discount rate emails. Each line landed like a gavel crack. Residents wept, some clapped, one old Marine saluted. Lorraine tried to shout privacy, but Sister Louise's alto soared over her protest. Quincy sank lower, cufflinks gleaming like manacles. Cameras from Channel 7 rolled. Huck had tipped them off. After the final amen, Quincy approached, face ashen. "Mama, Margaret, please, we panicked after Dad died. You seemed lonely, the house was big." "Lonely?" I answered. "Son, loneliness isn't solved by locking the lonely away, it's solved by showing up." He opened his mouth, but Lorraine tugged his sleeve. "Legal counsel says no statements." I handed them both envelopes, the letters I'd written. "Read these when you're ready to meet me as people, not project managers." They walked out, surrounded by flashing bulbs, their exodus quieter than their entrance. That evening, Reba and I sat on my stripped porch, sunset flaring tangerine through empty window frames. A moving truck arrived, not to take, but to return. The deputy had executed a repossession order. My sofa, my photos, even Charles's record player rolled back like prodigal furniture. I set the needle on his favorite gospel vinyl. The first scratchy chords filled the room, and for a moment I danced, slow, barefoot, free. Reba laughed, clapping along, her joy louder than any courtroom. Justice may be filing its paperwork, but forgiveness is a slower clerk. You'll hear whether my children choose apology over appeal, and how a surprise visitor on my doorstep turns this battle from legal skirmish to family revival. Keep your heart tuned, darlings. The next note hits deeper than bass drum thunder. Morning cracked open like a warm biscuit, buttery light spilling across boxes I'd yet to unpack. Birds argued on the magnolia branch, and somewhere down the block, Reba's gospel playlist floated through open windows, proof that life hums even when court dates loom. I just poured chicory coffee when a knock rattled the screen door. Expecting another reporter, I braced myself, only to find a slim girl clutching her backpack like a life raft. "Grandma Margaret," she whispered. It was Ava, Quincy's eldest, all freckles and freshman braces. My spine prickled. Custody weekends were Lorraine's domain, not mine. Ava's eyes were red from crying. "They don't know I'm here," she said. "Dad and Mom are fighting about the news videos. I heard them say you were unstable." Her voice cracked. "But you're the most stable thing I know." My heart folded. I ushered her inside, setting a mug of chocolate milk on Charles's old chess table. "Baby, truth can look messy before it gets tidy. What did you come to ask?" She pulled a crumpled letter, my letter to Quincy, out of her pocket. "Dad left this on the counter. I read it. You wrote that forgiveness is offered but earned. How do you earn forgiveness?" Her question felled me harder than any legal blow. I took her hands, noting chipped nail polish and pulse quick as hummingbird wings. First, you admit every cut you made. Then you stitch each one, even if it takes years. Forgiveness is less a gift and more a garden. Hard to start, easy to neglect, she nodded, tears slipping. Can I stay a while? It feels safe here. Safe. A word Lorraine and Quincy had sold in glossy brochures. I exhaled gratitude and set about making scrambled eggs. While Ava fed the stray tabby under the porch, I phoned Reba. We've got company, and perhaps a bridge. Minutes later, Reba arrived with blueberry muffins and deputy nephew Zach in tow. Zach tipped his hat, eyeing the driveway. Ma'am, for what it's worth, Quincy showed up at Precinct First Light asking how to retract a fraudulent POA, said his conscience bit him. A spark, not yet hope, but the tinder of it, flared in my chest. What did you tell him? That he'd need to do more than shred papers, Zach said. Judge wants a statement of remorse and a restitution plan. Ava peeked from the doorway. Grandma, Dad's capable of better. He just forgot. People don't forget, sugar, I answered softly. They reprioritize. Yet when I looked at her, my blood wrapped in teenage fragility, I knew bridges matter more than barbed wire. I laid a blank notebook on the table. Write him. Tell him what safe really feels like. Mid-afternoon, I found myself in the sanctuary of First Baptist, empty except for sunlight streaming through stained glass. I kneeled where Charles once led devotionals, asking God whether righteous anger can share pews with mercy. The silence replied with only heartbeat and distant cicadas, enough answer for now. As I rose, footsteps echoed. Quincy stood at the rear aisle, suit jacket in hand, eyes swollen from repentance or lack of sleep, maybe both. He clutched 2 envelopes and a cashier's check. Mom, he breathed, voice splintering. I revoked the POA. Here's every penny left. Lorraine wired half to her parents already, but I'll repay it with interest. He offered the envelopes like burnt offerings. The second letter is Dad's medals. They never left the house. Lorraine hid them to protect value. I'm sorry. We got scared of bills and of losing you before we lost you. I swallowed hard. Fear isn't licensed to cage someone, Quincy. I know. He glanced at the stained glass, colors slicing across his face, guilt painted in ruby and sapphire. If the court still wants me punished, I'll accept it, but can you, someday, let me call you Mama again? Tears threatened, but I held steady. You start by coming to supper tonight. Bring an appetite and a hammer. We've got shelves to rehang, and you'd best practice saying I was wrong before grace. Relief flushed his cheeks. Yes, ma'am. One apology doesn't rebuild a home, but the first swing of a hammer sets the nail. Lorraine shows up with lawyers in tow, Ava's letter in her hand, and the standoff turns from courtroom drama to kitchen table reckoning you won't want to miss. The scent of pot roast drifted through the bungalow when a sleek silver Lexus crunched onto my gravel drive. Lorraine stepped out first. Heels, lipstick, legal pad. 2 suited attorneys followed, briefcases gleaming under the porch light. Quincy, already inside sanding a bookshelf, froze mid-stroke. Ava clutched her notebook, eyes wide. Reba set down the gravy boat like it was live ammunition. Lord, give us tact stronger than temptation, I prayed and opened the screen door. Lorraine's greeting was ice-polished smooth. Mother, we're here to reach an amicable resolution before further reputational damage occurs. Baby, I said, reputation is what folks guess. Character is what the Lord knows. Which one y'all here to mend? Her jaw flexed. One attorney produced a settlement proposal. Pay back the missing funds over 10 years, drop all charges, sign a non-disparagement clause. I skimmed the pages, then slid them beneath the hot casserole dish. Ink began to blur. My supper's hotter than that offer, I said. Come eat before the gravy skins. The lawyers balked, but pot roast steam has a way of humbling starch collars. Soon 6 chairs scraped under the kitchen table, courtroom replaced by cornbread. For a full minute, silverware was the only voice. Finally, Ava unfolded her handwritten letter, trembling. Mom, Dad, Grandma didn't feel safe. Safe isn't marble floors, it's people who ask before they decide. Lorraine's mascara glittered. She started, I wanted the best medical, but Ava cut in, gentle yet firm. The best comes with consent. Quincy laid his fork down. I forged her signature, Lorraine. No spin, we sinned, plain. He turned to me. Mom, whatever restitution, I'll sign. The attorneys whispered urgent counsel, but Lorraine hushed them. Tears streaked her blush. Mother, I I was drowning in spreadsheets and toddlers. Creekside sounded merciful for us. She reached into her purse, sliding across the table a velvet pouch, Charles's medals. I shouldn't have priced memories. My chest tightened. I opened the pouch, brass catching lamplight like sunrise on water. These belong to Ava now, reminders that honor outlives shortcuts. I placed the medals in my granddaughter's shaking hands. I exhaled. Here's my counteroffer. Full repayment within 3 years, sell the Lexus if needed, public apology at church next Sunday. And you volunteer monthly at Creekside so residents see what family looks like. Do that, I drop criminal charges, though the judge will set her own fines. Lorraine met the attorney's stunned eyes, then nodded. Agreed. Quincy's relief rattled the windows. Reba clapped once. Well then, pass the sweet tea. Contracts taste better with sugar. After dishes, Lorraine lingered. Mom, can I help hang that shelf? She steadied the board while Quincy drove the final nail. Small work, but Wood remembers every blow and every brace. When they left, the house hummed softer. Ava curled on the sofa, medals in her lap. Grandma, families break, but do they always glue back? Not always, I said, tucking a quilt around her shoulders. But sometimes the cracks let heaven's light map new roads. I stepped onto the porch. Fireflies stitched to gold freckles across the night. Somewhere, church bells rehearsed tomorrow's hymns. Court may forgive, but communities keep score. And Creekside's residents now look to me for justice that paperwork can't deliver. In our final chapter, a hidden whistleblower emerges, a secret ledger surfaces, and my fight rises from family kitchen to statewide spotlight. Don't miss the reckoning that turns one grandma into Georgia's loudest guardian angel. I hadn't set foot in the county courthouse since Charles won his last zoning fight, yet here I was, granddaughter on my arm, Reba flanking us like moral cavalry, striding past oak panel echoes toward the clerk's office. Tucked beneath my blazer, a thumb drive of Creekside's darkest arithmetic, emailed overnight by none other than Curtis, the hymn-humming janitor. His message had pinged my phone at 3 a.m. Mrs. Wilkinson, I heard how they handled you. Found this ledger in a shred bin, couldn't let it die. Do what's right. The attached spreadsheets spelled organized neglect, inflated fall risk surcharges, double-billed meds, and a column marked family incentive, kickbacks for relatives who signed early admit contracts. My stomach turned. My case was a crack in a dam. The clerk, wide-eyed behind wire rims, scanned the drive. Ma'am, this belongs with the state's elder care task force. They meet this afternoon. God's timing wears sensible shoes. By noon, I faced a semicircle of officials and one granite-faced Creekside lawyer who clearly wished marble floors could swallow grandmother's whole. I told them about forged signatures and residents whose voices had faltered long before their pens. Curtis's ledger glowed on the screen behind me, each red number a drop of stolen dignity. The task force chair, Judge Delaney, gavel-sharp and silver-haired, leaned forward. Mrs. Wilkinson, are you prepared to testify at a state hearing? I was a Sunday school teacher for 35 years, Judge. I can hold a room's attention. A low chuckle warmed the chamber, the first crack in Creekside's defense. That evening, the bungalow buzzed like a revival. Choir ladies folded subpoenas into casserole deliveries. Zach the deputy pinned new locks on my doors. Quincy sanded more shelves than the house possessed. Penance and sawdust. Lorraine, hair unpinned, drafted a public apology destined for Sunday's pulpit. We paused only when Curtis himself arrived, cap in hand. Never thought I'd bring down my own paycheck, he murmured. I poured him coffee that tasted of courage. Ava slipped him Charles's spare Bible, every psalm on justice bookmarked. Near midnight, I sat alone on the porch swing, ledger printouts, fluttering in a warm coastal breeze. Fireflies stitched tiny verdicts across the yard. I thought of forgotten residents, their stories folded into profit margins, and felt fury settle into something sturdier. Mission. Ava creaked the screen door. Grandma, Dad says the media vans are back tomorrow. Aren't you scared? Scared keeps you awake, I said, tucking a firefly-lit strand of hair behind her ear. Awake gets things done, she smiled. Same dimple Quincy once wielded to beg for cookies, and nestled beside me. The night smelled of magnolias and reckoning. At dawn, cameras roll, Creekside scrambles, and Judge Delaney's subpoena list hits 20 pages long. In our final part, see how one ledger topples a gilded empire, and why the last word of this story isn't verdict, but victory. Stay close, loves. The gavel drops soon. Creekside's hearing filled the county auditorium to the fire code brim. Reporters jostled for angles. Choir ladies in cobalt robes packed the first 3 rows, humming "We Shall Not Be Moved." I sat squarely at the witness table, Curtis the janitor on my left, Ava on my right, her small fingers laced through mine like living rosary beads. Judge Delaney rapped once. "We are here to determine whether Creekside Haven engaged in systematic elder fraud." His gavel sounded like the door of a tomb slamming shut on greed. Creekside's counsel opened with polished contrition, blaming individual employees. But Curtis's thumb drive glowed on the projector. Color-coded kickbacks, forged signatures, drug markups. Gasps rippled. Then came residents' depositions, frail voices piping through speakers, describing lost pensions and silent birthdays. When my turn came, I stood. I am Margaret Wilkinson, mother, grandmother, widow. I was almost warehoused like a broken chair, but broken chairs still hold stories, Your Honor. I told mine, black van, forged contract, empty house, ending with Charles's medals held high. Honor cannot be monetized. Silence thickened, followed by slow applause. Gavel cut it off, but the echo lingered. Judge Delaney recessed for 40 minutes. The room buzzed like summer cicadas until he returned, verdict in hand. Creekside Haven's license is hereby suspended pending criminal investigation. A restitution fund will be established from its assets. The state recommends felony charges for executives and cooperating family members in future cases. His gaze softened as it found me. Mrs. Wilkinson, thank you for reminding us that vigilance grows strongest in seasoned hands. Outside, cameras flashed. I spoke one sentence. Today we mended the word elder back to elderly wisdom. Then I let microphones chase louder headlines. 3 months later, the bungalow thrums with hammers and laughter. Quincy spends Saturdays painting trim. Lorraine bakes apology pies that taste sweeter than the lies we buried. They volunteer at Creekside's successor, now a nonprofit, reading psalms with residents whose trust is tender as new skin. Ava wears Charles's medals on a ribbon pinned above her heart during civics club meetings. She says they remind her that courage is an everyday chore. As for me, I chair the county's new Elder Guardianship Board. My porch swing rarely sits empty. There's always a neighbor seeking counsel or a reporter wanting the next chapter. But every story must end somewhere, and this one ends with a sunrise. Magnolia blossoms opening, fireflies dimming, and my voice, steady, unbroken, whispering thanks to a God who turns cages into stages. Thank you, dear viewers, for walking every hard mile beside me. If this story stirred your spirit, please share your thoughts below. Press like and subscribe so you'll never miss another tale of grit and grace. May strength and kindness guide your own family journeys. Keep your hearts courageous.